Welcome back. It's one of those things. Pet insurance might seem like a monthly bill you just don't need until you really need it. For many pet owners, it's just not practical to pay $30 a month for a dog or $20 a month for a cat for health insurance. But when your pet needs surgery, many times it can cost thousands of dollars. Penny wise, pound foolish. Joining us for more are Dr. Nina Krajewski of Dr. Nina's Animal Hospital, Marcia Panucci of Dante's Den, and our consumer watchdog, Jerry Zivic. And Doctor, let me start with you. Somebody talked about that in our story there, but how many times do you have patients come in that you know the medical procedure is going to cost a lot of money and people are kicking themselves for not having insurance?
I actually think that people haven't really considered or looked into pet insurance, and I think that is a fault of the consumer at this point, or the owners. But I think that, yes, once the incident happens, maybe they think twice that maybe I should have done some research or looked into the product before.
And Marcia, you have seen this firsthand with animals that are taken by loving families, and then something happens that they financially just cannot deal with, and they wind up right back on your doorstep.
Yeah, they come back to sanctuaries and rescues such as Dante's, but also we hear so much about, and we've worked closely with Dr. Nina, and we adore her in the past, people get desperate. And when they find out exactly how much life-saving surgery is going to be for the dog, I think Dr. Nina would agree, well, let's euthanize the dog. Really? Really? I don't think so. Let's try to save. You take an oath. We take our business very seriously. Let's see how we can help that dog. And definitely with surgeons such as Dr. Nina, there's a lot of miracles that can happen every day.
That's true, but like insurance, it's not something that you really can do after the fact.
No, we encourage those people who come to Dante's Den, please consider pet insurance. And the time to do it is when your pet is young and has no pre-existing condition. I think you would agree with that. And yes, for a period of years, you would hope many years, that the dog would be or the cat would be so healthy. Okay, so you're writing the check, yes, 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 this is something I have to do. But when that one catastrophe happens, and it can happen quickly, that's when you want that pet insurance.
Jerry, so if a family out there is considering this, what is the first thing that they should think about?
Well, I think there's a lot of parallels to pet insurance to our own health insurance, and nobody ever wants to pay for it. But as Marcia said, when you have that catastrophe, you need that. So what you have to do is you have to look at, can you afford $10,000 out of pocket before you start? Because as the piece said, you're going to get reimbursed, so you're going to need that money up front.
You know, point of personal privilege, my family had this very situation. A schnoodle, or the love of our life, had a severe and sudden spinal injury, and we were $5,000 into the door when we went to the veterinary ER. That's just, a chunk of change that many families just cannot afford.
It is difficult. I mean, veterinary medicine has a lot to offer diagnostically for pets now, but in essence, the cost is becoming an issue with a lot of owners, and when this catastrophe happens, it's unfortunate.
All right, we are just getting warmed up. We'll have much more on pet insurance costs right after we check the first alert weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about pet insurance, and joining us for more, Dr. Nina Krajewski of Dr. Nina's Animal Hospital, Marcia Panucci of Dante's Den, and our consumer watchdog, Jerry Zivic. And Doctor, I'm going to start with you again. Could you guess what percentage of your patients, your families, have insurance?
It is very low. I would say that I probably fill out an insurance form for an owner once a month, and that's few and far between. We don't get a large percentage, and I think it's because they just don't know and haven't heard about pet insurance.
And of those families, what type of coverage do they have? Do they have coverage that would cover your regular visit and shots, or is it only coverage for injuries and severe illnesses?
I would say most of my owners have more for emergencies. A few have for wellness. I have a few patients that have chronic conditions that are covered. So I do think it's real important to do your job in looking at what each kind of plan can hold for you and cover for you.
Marcia, let me ask you this. Is it more difficult or more important to get insurance on a dog that maybe is adopted or rescued than an animal that comes from other means?
Not really. I mean, we have to look at the criteria that is being asked for, and of course, when people come to adopt dogs from us, we turn over their entire medical record to them. And of course, the insurance companies for the pets are no different than the humans. They don't want pre-existing conditions.
Well, let me ask you about that, because when it comes to pre-existing conditions, many dogs that are up for adoption, the dogs and cats for that matter, who need families the most, often do have conditions, whether it is worms or viruses or something like that. Does that make it more difficult for those families to get insurance for them?
I think that you have to look at the individual insurance policies and see what it is that they will cover. For example, one of them that we offer, and I think Dr. Nina does also, it covers the wellness, covers spaying and neutering, covers dentals and that type of thing. So you have to take a look at it. But I must tell you, on the panel, I am a convert. I did not believe in pet insurance. For the longest time, I equated it to a human dental insurance, which for many years covered nothing, okay? But I have since seen the light. And I really feel that if you get the dogs and you get them evaluated by your veterinarian and they say, okay, we've got no existing pre-existing conditions, this dog is in fairly good health at this moment, let's talk about insurance. Get it while they're young.
Okay, and Jerry, but what are the pitfalls out there? I would imagine all these companies are not alike. There are good companies and bad companies, just like anything else. What do you see out there?
Well, what's interesting is who regulates the health insurance companies for dogs. And interestingly enough, dogs are treated like property. And so it's regulated as strictly as health insurance would be regulated. And you were talking about the percent of patients the doctor sees that are insured. I read some statistics that said less than 1% of all pet owners have insurance. And also you were talking about pre-existing conditions or things that would make the insurance more expensive. Certain breeds, and I'm sure Marcia could attest to this, are more prone to have problems like hip dysplasia or something like that. And those premiums will actually be more expensive.
Okay, and are there companies out there that have better reputations than others? Sure,
and that goes back to the old situation that you have to do your research, see if there's been complaints filed. Just because you're allowed.
Where do you go?
The Florida Attorney General, the Better Business Bureau, the Department of Insurance would all regulate this. But because so few people actually have this insurance, there's going to be a very small database. So your best bet would probably be to talk to the doctor, the vet that you're going to go to. What's your experience with the XYZ insurance company? Well, they cover most things. Some vets, I learned, Dr. Nina, she actually has a self-insured program for her patients where she'll cover all wellness for her patients, which is less expensive than dog insurance.
Well, Dr. Jerry brings up a big point. An important point that some dogs have or are known for hip dysplasia, like labs and so forth.
Yes.
Does that make it more difficult and more expensive for them to get insurance?
It does. It does. When you look at some of the policies, they have breed restrictions. Certain breeds are not covered at all. Certain,
like what? What breeds would not be covered?
Some of the large breeds have a hard time getting covered. Great Danes, Newfoundlands, Burmese mountain dogs, they have a hard time getting covered. I would also say that some of the large breed dogs that are predisposed to knee injuries, hip injuries, that part of their medical conditions are not covered, and maybe some of the other things are. So they exclude that part because they're more prone to it.
Marcia, has there been any change in terms of the families that you deal with in terms of their willingness to get insurance?
Yes, I have seen a change, primarily because by the time they come to us, unfortunately, they have lost a pet, maybe within a 2-week period, within wherever. And they want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And so they do their research, and we encourage them to. We don't necessarily recommend a particular insurance, but we'd like to see them consider it. And yes, we've had situations where people will come to us and say, it's either the house or the dog. And you know, and of course, you know what we're going to say. It's the dog. But we certainly understand what the conditions could be. And then that's where a sanctuary such as Dante's Den does come into play, because we're going to take care of the dog and hopefully help those people.
Jerry, are different states different in terms of oversight, in terms of these companies that provide insurance?
It's across the board, across the United States. They all treat it the same way. And it's basically a stepchild of government. Nobody's really regulating this part of the insurance industry. And if you think about it, the pet care business is a $15+ billion a year business. And it's only growing. The cost of technology is pushing expenses. The cost of medicines are pushing expenses. So why there's not a lot of interest, I don't know. But can I ask Marcia a question?
Sure.
So my question is clearly you care and love dogs. Have you ever thought about requiring the people that come for a dog to actually get insurance?
We require pet insurance when they board, when they have extensive medical boarding by us, as well as our Semper Paw program, which is the military, and of course our lifetime care. We require that. We can only strongly recommend and suggest when they come to adopt a dog.
And doctor, give us an example, one example if you can, of where health insurance for an animal, dog or a cat, really saved this family thousands of dollars and a terrible decision in terms of what could have happened.
Sure. Hit by cars, unfortunately, are a common thing that we see. And I have seen where it has come down to a financial decision. And if at that point they've had insurance, I see that owners are more than willing to do whatever they need to do. And they're not scared to say, yes, this is what I need to do for Fluffy.
Right.
But in the other case, I've seen where they don't have the insurance, and it may come down to humane euthanasia, because that would be best for the animal.
We have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. And our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. So, doctor, you see these stories play out every day in your office. If there was one piece of advice you would give families with pets, dogs, and cats, what would that be?
I would say really consider pet insurance. Obviously, some of your veterinarians, like us at Dr. Nina's Animal Hospital, have wellness plans, but for those emergencies where you know they're going to be top dollar, consider having it, because you don't want to have to make another decision based on finances for your pet.
Marsha, what about families who open their homes to animals who need a home, but they don't have a lot of means, and you know we all have a lot of bills to pay every month, and something's got to give.
I do think, though, that you have to do the research, but really search your heart. We all love, for the most part, animals, and our hearts go out to those animals. But the AKC tells you that you should spend a minimum of $2,000 a year on the medical care. We've talked about that during the break. So you've got to think about this. It's not just we're going to put a water bowl down and we're going to buy a little food and we're going to hope that Fido is going to do well. A healthy dog is a happy dog, makes for healthy, happy parents.
And Jerry, I would imagine that the first thing you're going to say is do your research.
Well, of course, do your research. You have to check what the covered conditions are. You have to check exactly what they're referring to as a pre-existing condition. You have to check to see how long between each incident that you have to wait, or is there continuous coverage? You have to check if there's guaranteed renewability here. You have to check our medicines covered. You have to check if anything else is excluded.
All right. We have to leave it there. Thank you all for joining us. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show about the Tide Pod Challenge. Social media challenges have been going on for years. There was eating a spoonful of cinnamon, chugging a gallon of milk, and more. But now the Tide Pod Challenge is putting kids into hospitals. The kids record themselves eating detergent and post it to social media. We went to Facebook for your thoughts, and Mary says kids just didn't come with common sense. And a different Mary says it is time for kids to get off social media and do something more productive with their time. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7, and FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, that's because it's expired. Just go to the App Store and read download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Dr. Nina Krajewski of Dr. Nina's Animal Hospital, Marcia Panucci of Dante's Den, and our consumer watchdog, Jerry Zivick.